The flood levels from the destruction of the Nova Kakhovka dam in Ukraine are expected to reach their peak Wednesday, but the scale of the devastation across large parts of the region has brought fresh heartbreak in what is still an active war zone. It's now threatening a new wave of homelessness, disease, toxic chemical contamination, and even warnings of floating landmines in this ecological disaster. This is the city of Kherson, which was once occupied by Russian forces before Ukraine's military retook it. It's where Reuters' camera crew found this resident, who's saying her grandmother is trapped on the first floor of a building with her cats and dogs. She was brought there yesterday thinking it would be safer for her. Alas, it was not. Elsewhere in the city is Irina, an animal rescue volunteer. She says her group has already recovered up to 30 dogs. They're trying to save whatever animals they can. But first, they need to wait for a boat so they can go out and save more. Russian state media are reporting that although the water levels may have peaked, the floods are expected to remain for up to 10 days. The long-term damage is another matter. Ukraine's government says the destruction of the dam, which it blames on Russia, is threatening to leave hundreds of thousands of residents without access to drinking water. It also says it will turn what was once farmland into swamps and turn other areas into desert. Russia blames Ukraine for the disaster and has imposed a state of emergency in the areas that it controls, such as this town, Nova Kakhovka, where the destroyed dam is. Resident Valery Melnik's home is flooded, but he says he won't leave. He wants to stay, he says, because the war can't go on forever.
Абсолютно катастрофічна ситуація на окупованій частині Херсонщини.
The situation in the occupied part of the Kherson region is absolutely catastrophic. The occupiers have simply abandoned the people in these dreadful conditions. Without rescue, without water, they are left on the rooftops in flooded communities.
Після того, як держава-терорист спричинила катастрофу, вона ще й максимізує шкоду від неї.
Now, a clear and prompt response from the world is needed to what is happening. It is even impossible to accurately determine how many people in the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson region may die without rescue, without drinking water, without food, without medical assistance. Our military and special services, to the extent possible, despite the shelling, are saving people.
Та спецслужби настільки, наскільки це можливо, попри обстріли, рятують людей. Провів сьогодні кілька важливих.
But extensive efforts are needed. It is necessary for international organizations such as the Red Cross to immediately get involved in the rescue operation and help people in the occupied part of the Kherson region. Each life lost there is a verdict to the existing international architecture and international organizations that have lost the ability to save lives.
Є домовленість із керівником МАГАТЕ.
If an international organization is not present in the zone of this catastrophe, it means it does not exist at all. It is incapable. Ukraine and our government have made all the necessary requests.
Це безальтернативне завдання.
This horrifying act of terror has resulted in a massive ecological and humanitarian catastrophe. The Ukrainian government has organized the evacuation from the territory of Kherson Oblast under our control. International humanitarian organizations, on behalf of the government of Ukraine, I urge you, you must act immediately.
Why was the Nova Kakhovka dam breached? The destruction of a major dam in southern Ukraine has unleashed floodwaters across the war zone, forcing thousands of people from their homes, threatening vast swathes of agricultural land, and raising fears about the safety of Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Both Ukraine and Russia have accused the other of destroying the dam. Let's take a closer look at what we know so far. The Soviet-era dam is located on the Dnipro River in the Kherson region and is part of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. The reservoir holds 4.3 cubic miles of water, a volume roughly equal to the Great Salt Lake in the US state of Utah. It supplies water to the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014, and to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, also under Russian control. Ukraine, which commented first, said Russia deliberately blew up the dam.
The whole world will know about this Russian war crime, the crime of ecocide.
President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russian forces of blowing up the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station from inside the facility. A Ukrainian military spokesperson said Russia's aim was to prevent Ukrainian troops crossing the Dnipro River to attack Russian occupying forces. Russia has hit back, saying Ukraine sabotaged the dam to cut off water supplies to Crimea and to distract attention from its faltering counter-offensive. Here's Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu.
Aiming to prevent the offensive operations by the Russian army on this section of the front line, the Kyiv regime committed an act of sabotage, or rather, terrorist act.
With water levels surging higher, many thousands of people are likely to be affected. Evacuations of civilians began on both sides of the front line. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the dam's destruction was another example of the human cost of war.
At least 16,000 people have already fled their homes, lost their homes, with safe and clean drinking water supplies at risk for many thousands more. We are seeing the effects in the city of Kherson, the town of Nova Kakhovka, and 80 other towns and villages along the Dnipro River. Massive flooding, large-scale evacuations, environmental devastation, destruction of newly planted crops. And that is threats to the highly threatened Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility.